5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I'm Eddie Starr, and this is the College of Rock and Roll Knowledge. Class is now in session. This is where the music and culture that shaped a generation live on, and my own path through the world of rock and roll. Mercury is retrograde, and the College of Rock and Roll Knowledge returns. I'm back after a very long break. The last episode came out in April of 2023. And since then, I've been busy. It really hasn't been a break. I've just been busy with my label, Ton Up Records, which now, in addition to my music, includes the great Philip Paul Kelly, who I signed in 2022 and appeared on the College of Rock and Roll Knowledge episodes 14, 27, and 29. I did Requiem for a Wrestler with him, his musical off-Broadway. We released the original cast recording and his single Savior, and he now has a new single out, Only the Lonely, which is doing very well. It's his version of the classic Roy Orbison song, so you should check that out. From Los Angeles, the legendary country punks, Blood on the Saddle, and the founder, Greg Davis, on Ton Up Records. And last year was the 40th anniversary of Blood on the Saddle's debut, critically acclaimed debut album. So we released First Blood, which is a compilation album of early recordings and some amazing acoustic duets he did with Annette Zelinskis, who was a member of Blood on the Saddle and that classic lineup in the 1980s. So you should definitely check that out. And I go way back with Greg to the 90s. So you should, if you want to hear more about Greg, you can check out episode 22 and 23 of the College of Rock and Roll Knowledge. And the late, great Dean Ford, who was in Marmalade, his solo recordings are out through Ton Up Records. And of course, Marmalade had the worldwide hit Reflections of My Life, so you should check out his work. Today, I'm going to be talking with Mr. Sam Taylor, who is a singer, songwriter, guitar player, frontman, and co-founder of Toy Machine Gun, the band from the land of Gene Wilder, Harley Davidson, and breweries. Do you know where I'm talking about? It's a place otherwise known as Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So I signed Toy Machine Gun back in November of last year. And that story I'm going to save for another podcast. But we've reissued their debut album, Where's the Mansion, and Split the Days in March. And they're an alternative rock band, but they write really great songs. So now that you've heard what I've been doing, all my plugs, Mr. Sam Taylor, how are you doing?
How's the lighting here?
Pardon? Oh, it's great. But
Okay,
remember, I only use the audio.
Oh, you only use the audio.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I wasted 3 minutes of our time.
Oh,
Forgot that you only use audio.
yeah. Yeah. Well, my thought is that, if you have video, everybody's looking at the people rather than listening to what they're saying. So that's what I think about it.
Sure.
Besides that, I think there's sort of like a little bit of mystery you want to keep,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
How are things going?
Things are well. Yeah, I've just I have my, I'm going to okay this just so, yeah, cool. All right. Yeah, they're great. I just, I have my couple days of the restaurant work, which always feels great, but it's like a little different than the rest of my schedule. So
okay.
Up a little later, my body's usually kind of just catching up again on Tuesday, so it's like a slower start to the day. But yeah, I feel good. I feel
That's
good. How are you
cool.
feeling? How are you feeling today?
I'm doing well, just running around.
Running around?
Yeah. Yeah,
What part of
taking
what,
care of business.
what part of New York are you in?
Manhattan.
I've heard of that place.
Yeah.
Cool. What part of Manhattan?
Midtown.
Midtown. Sweet.
Yeah.
I love New York, man. I haven't been out there in a couple summers. There was well, just before the pandemic, I was going there regularly. I had a friend that lived out there and we'd stay in Queens, and then we come into Manhattan and do the whole, I don't know, it's like, for me, it's like a field trip. For you, it's life, but it's just so cool to be there.
Yeah. No, New York is great. Um, it's different. I mean, I grew up in Los Angeles, so
That's right.
that was entirely different mindset and way of moving through the world.
Uh-huh.
But I love them both, and hate them both for different reasons. So you know, I don't think any one place. You know, how can I put it? They're both really great cities for different reasons. So,
Mhm.
but New York is great. So, Sam, I'm gonna do the what was it, the caterpillar and Alice in Wonderland, and ask, who are you?
Um,
I mean, I think that Toy Machine Gun, and you're the lead singer, and you're the founder. So I'm interested in finding out your motivations. How did you get started in music?
yeah. Thanks for clarifying the question because I just got out of a retreat and I live at a meditation center, and the question of who are you, it's one that I would ask regularly, and the answer it's good to have like a focused answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I was in a I, I when I was in high school, I always had dreams about, I think it was like junior high, I started having dreams about, I liked the rock star. I think there was something around the rock star kind of had sort of like a kind of this sort of superhero quality. Like, I mean, I feel like I grew up like, embarrassingly enough, there was a time where I was really into the butt rock bands and the hair bands of the late 80s, and it was so flashy. It was kind of like this, taking this rock star thing that I feel like we've known all of our lives in some way, shape, or form, you know, and they were like really doing you know, I guess what the Stones probably are really good at, and Aerosmith, and like, that's like kind of, um, I don't
Channel,
know,
channeling
it's
the
like,
archetypes.
it's like really staged, like, so there's something about like, of course I was hooked and lured into this like thing. I was like, that'd be cool to like play on stage, and like, I don't know, like there's this whole like, I think I was even attracted to the somewhat the flamboyancy of it all. And yeah, and things of course changed as I grew up, but as I got into high school, I was just about like consuming music, as left and right, how we do, like it, the internet wasn't a thing really while I was in high school. So um, until like my last year. And so like, and sharing music was, you know, definitely word of mouth and, um, dubbing things off of people. And yeah, I was approached at some point, you know, like with these people that I shared music with and things like that. They were in a band and I was, you know, they're like, do you ever sing? And my friend John, who's a good friend of Mark's as well, um, actually met Mark my freshman year. I'll just share this story because it's funny. We didn't talk about this with you last time, but my first day of freshman year, I had a math class with this guy, Mr. Payne, who was really cool. Um, he was way into music as well, and there were like he'd leave like 5 minutes of the end of class for us to, I think maybe 10 minutes, like depending on how we worked, to like each get a choice to play something off of his CD catalog, which was, I mean, insane. And so we do that, and then we just kind of hang out in the last bit of class. And I remember Mark drawing Vic from Megadeth like on the chalkboard. He could draw really well. And I remember he looked over at me at one point. He's like, "You like Metallica, dude?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "I'll get you some really rare Metallica." And he taped me all this like live Metallica stuff, and it was really cool. I still have the tape. It's one of the only tapes I have. And so we were sort of like kind of like friends, but we didn't really hang out or anything. But a couple years later, his friend John, who I knew I knew John and his brother. It's like, "Do you sing?" And I was like, "In the shower, yeah, I sing." You know, he's like, "Would you ever like to try to sing in our band?" And so I was like, "Yeah." And so we did one practice. And at that practice, I remember just having the most unreal sore throat ever. And towards the end, and I was really just trying to make it through because I don't know, I guess I was kind of getting the childhood dream of mine to like sing on a microphone with a band. And this band was I was actually trying out to sing for the Tosa Fest that they were going to play. And I ended up leaving there and being sick for like 2 weeks with mono. It was like just the worst. But I did go to the show and they played without me and they still wanted me in the band. So I then got in the band. I think we played one show out. It was about Battle of the Bands. And Mark, later on that year, I remember we went and skipped school on their seniors skip day. And Mark's like, I went over to Mark's house and he started playing his bass. And I was like, wow, damn, this guy can really play. He was, and then he later admitted that he really wanted to like kind of show off with like his bass, and he really wanted me to be in a band with him. And that band Exhaust kind of phased out. We just didn't practice over the summer. We weren't like taking it seriously. Those guys had graduated high school, and Mark and I started making music like probably the beginning of my senior year. Those guys are all great ahead of me, and yeah, I think it was like some sort of probably like 96, and Mark and I started like writing our first songs, and I think one or two of those we still play and kind of consider it a part of the catalog. But yeah, it was before too long that we magnetized. Well, Chad was kind of like always around from the beginning. I would say I don't even really remember. I don't think Chad and I remember meeting each other because it was so fluid. I'd kind of known him, seen him around high school a lot, and um, yeah, I think we must have practiced a couple times, and then we magnetized Davey as a drummer, And Davey was in like a favorite band of mine with a lot of friends. They were like opening up for a lot of the Milwaukee bands. And in Displacement, I was like, that was his band, Displacement. He was such a great drummer. He really like had the punk thing down, and he was just like he vibed with all of us. You know, we just had like a similar shared interest in music. I would say that like Mark and Chad were kind of more metalheads, and Davey and I kind of we saw shows together, and a lot of the local shows. I got to know him pretty well. We skated together a lot, and he dated my sister, and it was basically family, you know. And he joined the band, and hey James, hey,
Cool. Well,
yeah.
I want to go back though. So when you talk about, you know, the the late 80s metal scene, were there any bands in particular that caught your attention? Like, I know you mentioned Metallica, Mark giving you the tape and stuff, but was there anything in particular that you were listening to?
So many things in that. Um, yeah, so many.
Because a lot of times I found, and everybody's different, but generally there's like one, you can listen, there's a lot of things that you'll like, but generally there's one, band or, artist that captures your attention. And, was that something for you that, I don't know, was that your experience?
Yeah.
Or was it more of you were into that, I guess that would be like Skid Row and
Well, yeah. So those songs were like kind of hot. They like a lot of those bands had like a couple different songs.
the Guns N' Roses and
Yeah, Guns N' Roses. I like Tesla a lot, and yeah. But I would say like in terms of like listening to one band that I think that had all the material that I was like, wow, I really appreciate all of what they're doing. I think was probably, gosh, I mean, growing up, well, my dad turned me on to Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix all around that same time. So those were kind of coexisting with those bands. And it was like undeniable that, oh, like, with Led Zeppelin, it's like I like every song, it's like these guys are a powerhouse. And I think Pink Floyd, my brother and I always talk about this, is like there's like this kind of they're so edgy and like strange. I think for growing up listening to them, they always kind of freaked me out a little bit because they were so dark and a lot of, psychological and things like that. But also a band that I couldn't just deny this loving their music and being like, what is, these guys, they're just like hitting it for some reason. And now knowing music, it's like, wow, yeah, these guys write great songs, and they were at the head of their, they were pioneers in a lot of ways. Yeah. So I think, Jimi Hendrix, like, there's just like no question there. I think
yeah.
in terms of just his influence and, but yeah, so those guys were like, I think those were the constants, where, it's like, salt and peppered in there, or peppered in there was, these hits of like, pour some sugar on me. I think just kind of spoke to this, like, like early angst. And and then that kind of moved into like really appreciating Metallica, and I would say that was kind of like eighth grade. And that year that I was in eighth grade was there were so many albums released within 6 months of each other. The Black Album, the Use Your Illusions 1 and 2 came out. Nevermind, I think Dirt from Alice in Chains came around that time, and I think there was I can't remember which Soundgarden album, but they were all like kind of right there, And so there's like this thing happening, and I think once I kind of caught on to Nirvana and things like that. That was just like a kind of a big obsession of a band. And I really appreciated Beck. You know, all the music kind of came out in '94. Started really getting into Primus, um, and a little bit of more of a throwback. I was really appreciating the Pixies, and uh, yeah, just kind of like I think too, like being a skater in the '90s, there were a lot of the skate videos that were playing music, and that's how you sometimes catch on. And then Beavis and Butthead was a thing, you know. So you're like hearing these bands like Ween, you know, which I really appreciate. Ween, they, you know, it's like, when would I have heard of these guys? I guess I had a friend that really liked them, but yeah, I didn't really have older siblings, so it was like kind of really sourcing music from others, you know. Um, but had friends with older siblings in bands, and I would kind of catch on to like certain things. We had a local band, the Pacers, which they were a ska band, and I like got deeply into ska along with all these things too. And then hip hop, you know, like there's all this other stuff happening too. You know, there's like,
Yeah, it's sort of funny how you guys are, are very eclectic that way. Um, in terms of it's sort of a representative, I guess, the 90s and that whole, I guess you could say alternative type scene, where there was this fusion of, different types of, different genres into, I guess you could say rock. I mean, I always thought of rock as pretty much straight ahead, like Sex Pistols or, the Ramones. And that was sort of like 10 years before, but yeah, that sort of represents the 90s for sure, with that whole sort of metal and grunge. And although it was, I think of it, when I think back on it, it's, it was sort of like, oh, 93, and all of a sudden metal was gone and there was grunge,
uh,
but for other people, that's why I find it really fascinating how people, have the, based on where you were and what was happening. I've talked to friends of mine here in New York who uh, grew up at the same time, and I'll ask them, oh, what were you listening to? And there are a lot of, there is a lot of overlap, and you have that whole, um, whether it was a New York vibe or the LA vibe. But I guess, you guys grew up in Milwaukee, and that's a whole different experience in terms of, not only that, but I notice within the band, you guys, it's not, and I think I mentioned this when I was talking to you and Mark, that it's really like an organic thing, you know?
mhm.
You really have a sort of, it's like your life sort of folds into like the band. You know what I mean? Which is
Yeah.
really sort of different, because most of, if you're in Hollywood or you're in New York and you're doing a band, there's the band. And a lot of times it's with people who, who you don't, who you share an interest in music and you want to do music, and you have the band and you have the goal, but you guys have a really different sort of very personal thing going on with it. And I think that was sort of reflected in um, a couple times, talking to Mark, and then, he sent me some pictures, and there was like pictures of you guys, just like doing stuff, together as friends and stuff. He put that in the whole thing. And it was sort of like, well, this isn't really to do with the band, but for you guys see it different.
Mhm.
And I think that's really interesting. Whereas most people, like I said, it's getting a band and, you were joining a business enterprise. You know what I mean? With people
Yeah.
that you have somewhat. And I think that's true for a lot of people. But, I think that perspective is it's pretty interesting. Also, too, the fact that you had all these different, musical interests and taste and stuff where, I think about it and I've always thought about, in LA, there was always scenes, you know what I mean? So like in school, there was I was in junior high, it was like the early 80s. So it was, all new wave, so you had the new wave kids, you had the Led Zeppelin kids, and people who were into, what now would probably be called classic rock. And although now they call it all of it classic rock for some reason, but, and then you had punks and, but you hung with that specific group. Do you know what I mean? It was
Yeah.
more of yeah, it was very different in terms of, when I talk to, when you talk to other people and musicians and different places and that, it wasn't so, I guess, clicky
Mhm.
in that way.
Sure.
But I think also too that, it's part of the times where, music was really primarily the pastime of what you did,
Hmm. Hmm.
prior to all this stuff existing. So how did you guys, so going back to Toy Machine Gun and we talked about these, different bands that you were into. So there really wasn't any, was there anybody who were at any moment where you just consciously said, well, that's what I want to do?
Uh-huh.
Anybody that made you do that? Or was it just sort of like, it seems like it was sort of an organic thing where, oh, I'm, hanging out and a friend says, hey, man, can you sing? Or did you think that you could do that before,
I personally didn't. I
prior
think,
to that moment?
yeah, I think there's something just about my personality in general that stumbles along onto things. Um, but which it would be good to have sometimes a little bit more of a plan. Um, but
You know what
uh,
they say about plans, though?
what's that?
That life is what happens while you're busy telling God what your plans are.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, that's very, I mean, I think there is a part of me that lives by like that understanding in some ways. Yeah, I mean, I think it's like if it felt like something that I had thought about and then it's like, oh, here's this avenue. And yeah. And um, in a way, which is good about Mark is that like he's a little bit more he's a different personality in that I mean, I hope I don't go into the realm of projecting too much here, but I think that Mark, the way things work, for at least between the two of us, is that he is really driven and has ideas, and like he's like, yeah, I wanted you to be in my band. That's a thought. And he was like, like wants to work on that and making that happen. So I think he's really good at magnetizing these types of things. And I think that if it wasn't for Mark's drive all along, that at some point things would have fizzled out. Because I moved out to Seattle and but we just kept our relationship going. I think Toy Machine Gun is like a big part of our relationship, friendship, and yet I think that taking that step back and also realizing, oh well, we're also, there's a lot that we have that we share besides this, and but it is so woven, I think, in some ways of what you're saying into our lives. Like yeah, you look at it in the photos, like we were just hanging out, and then we, like, hey, let's go play some music, and so it's just like always, just Mark's was a hangout, and then we'd play music, and and people be around and people would come to our band practices and just hang out. And, some people would be watching Cartoon Network and, we'd go and work on a song or something. And So it did feel very fluid, even, and we also, I mean, we did make sure that we had a band practice night, but, and I think we made mention of this to you last time though. It's like, yeah, like sometimes I would finish work on a Monday and, and then band practice would be upstairs. So yeah, be, just walk upstairs, eat and play. It was just, it felt very, I mean, it felt scheduled, but it kind of was like scheduled into us hanging out a lot. And I think sometimes like there's like a good things and um, challenging things about that. Like I think when it came to like, oh well, what are we doing? Are we gonna start playing out? Or, like, are we gonna, it's like when it came to like actually getting motivated to be out on stage and do things, and like, do we want to like play for others other than just people that are hanging out, kind of thing. That became kind of um, a challenge. I think something that happened more while we were less of a hangout, more of a the kind of the business band when we started playing with Rob. But because then we were kind of traveling to Rob's house to play, and it was like, yeah, and then it's like we should play out and do things, and I think through meeting Rob, we were playing more parties, and then we eventually were playing out quite a bit, and then I moved, and we had this thought about moving all out to the Southwest, and it just kind of faded and didn't happen. But I think Mark and I's relationship stayed strong, along with like as things started to kind of progress with internet and sharing music and whatnot. Mark was still writing, and he was doing things in another project, and so he had that fire under him this whole time. Mark's always had the fire under him. I mean, I think that's what's good, and I think what works out really great in our personalities is I think he's kind of the driver, and I have like I think a little bit more space and kind of like I don't know if it's like grounding. Some of the stuff is like, it's like, okay, we got like, it's like we go at the studio or something. I think that's like the joke is Mark's like, okay, we got 20 songs. It's like, all right, well, we only have 3 days.
Yeah.
So let's talk about these songs a little bit. Yeah. And so I think there is something about like how we kind of work, and, it's up to me. It's like we'd go in with 3 songs or something, but we meet in the middle.
Yeah. And the clock is ticking, right?
Uh, yeah, yeah. But yeah,
So,
it's,
oh, go ahead.
oh, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, so where's the mansion? How did that all come about in writing those songs?
I would love to, I would love to have, I think it was such a fun time. Where's the Mansion? Because, that was the product of our time with Rob and like really seriously kind of getting together and like just playing songs over and over again, and songs that kind of came out of jams and songs that were like half written, but then we just workshop them actively at our band practices that we were doing twice a week. And there was just something about coming down into the space. We had like a time limit. Generally, we'd wake up Rob because he'd sleep very late. We'd get there and he'd be sleeping until 5. He's like this total night owl. And then we had right until 10 because it was in his dad's basement. And you couldn't go a second over 10. It was kind of, we have funny stories about any time we tried. But it was just like a container that was a good container for, yeah, it's just that album was just a product of that container. I think a lot, and playing out and like wanting, and like, yeah, I think there was something about like, we need to get these songs finished because we're going to be playing out. And so, yeah, I would say most of those songs were kind of pretty fresh. I don't know that we, with the exception of Cool Breeze that had been around since the beginning.
That's a
Um,
great song.
and it has three different versions.
That's a
I wish
great.
we
That
had
is
a
really a great song, though. I really
that was
like
the
that
kind of more
song.
punk rock version of it. But yeah, there was one that I don't know where those tapes are, but there was some with Davey, our old drummer. He really got into like the melody. We actually had some harmonies in that song. Anyway, um, but or maybe I'm thinking of another song. But that Cool Breeze has different versions, and Mark completely wrote it out. It's like one of his 4-track tapes. He got really into, I think, the 4-track because of John Frusciante did that album um, completely off of 4-track, right? Like when he split from the Chili Peppers for some time, and uh, and usually just a T-shirt. I always forget exactly how to say it, but it's such a fantastic album. Mark wrote all these songs and used a lot of the same type of equipment John Frusciante used. So there were some songs that were kind of on the back, but not many. I think what I would say, Where's the Mansion was like the true kind of Toy Machine Gun feel that sort of like has a constant is like me writing more material and Mark, and then the kind of Chad coming in and doing his thing. Um, that's still the same formula, I think, in a lot of ways. And I think that kind of started with that album, because I think there's some sort of seriousness behind it, and it was a little bit more mature than, um, yeah, it's funny, like I think that everything before that, we consider ourselves a heavier band. And then those songs that we're trying to, I think there were certain things that were kind of a little bit more um, melodic as well. And, before I think Davey had such a drive on the drums, and we were kind of like, yeah, we want to be like like, I don't know, we just had the influences were different. And then Rob kind of slowed some things down for us, I think. And yeah, I think the tunes just ended up being a little bit more experimental and melodic, and with a little bit of the throwback heavier stuff that we like too. And I think we always keep that, like this
Yeah,
is, it's not really like thought about too much. It's just what shows up when me and Mark's mix riffs or something like that. I think that's the thing. Like, I think in that time, it's like Mark has this part, I have this part. It's really true in something like No Second Guess. It's like the back and forth. That's like
yeah.
a complete half and half song, for us. So
But it is. But they're all going back to your thoughts on the different types of music you were listening to. You can really hear it. It's sort of like you can hear all those influences sort of coming together, and you guys did a really great job of the songs are really they're really well written, and they how can I put it? It works. You know what I mean? It's like you have, like, for instance, Cool Breeze, and then you have a song like 10 Cent Lemonade, which I think is very cool. It's sort of No Second Guess as well. I like that a lot too. But all of them are very unique in their own way. Now, do you write the lyrics, or do you guys write them together? Or
yeah, we write them together. I'd say that's the best way to. I think we write um, mostly. There's not a lot of back and forth. There are some songs that have been the back and forth lyrics, or like I think from No Second Guess, Mark wrote most of his parts. Like anything he sings. Um, I think it's generally good for us to have like some song that we do go back and forth and workshop on. We've had a funny, um, very like intentional, like couple songs where we tried to like kind of, I don't know if it's impress each other, but like try to make each other laugh kind of thing. Um, with like Like we have the song Bottles and Chains, and we were both rapping on it. And so we would just like switch verses. And that was a really fun song to do because we were trying to, throw out references from our, young life and like, all the Discoman stuff in there. Things
Yeah.
that,
Yeah, I
things
saw
that,
the video.
yeah, things that we'd only get, but it was kind of fun for us. And it's just like, kind of a way to, there were a lot of things that came out around that just in terms of like, let's just make more music. But yeah, so I think there is like something for the last album, You've Been Lost. That song was a song that I wrote, and I was like, Mark, you should sing it, because he kind of took like a guitar riff I had and turned it into kind of a melody. And I was like, you're this is your voice. And he had a song like that he kind of handed off to me too. So he wrote a lot of the song, the lyrics in that, but then there was a part of it that we were back and forth, and we meshed those lyrics. So I think that it's important for us to have that, but generally we'll kind of write. We'll usually write our own parts for what we sing. Yeah, like if we're kind of taking it, we'll take it that way, even if it's a song that the other person wrote, like
Yeah.
composed. So yeah, I think that's a little bit of a flavor. We have like three different ways, I think, of approaching something like that when it comes lyrically. But yeah, but something like 10 Cent Lemonade, I think Mark wrote that chorus. I wrote the verses. Yeah, and then Chad came in and wrote that really ripping solo. I think the best, like I always wish that album was recorded better. It was like there's something that's kind of just
Yeah,
losing
but
its
yeah,
soul.
but I think it sounds great.
Yeah.
It's a really great record, and you have to look at it as, to me, it's like, that's a snapshot in time.
Uh-huh.
That's where you guys were then. But I mean, the songs really, yeah, each one is really, really different. And you can hear a lot of those different influences, whether, that you mentioned. They really do
Well,
come out, but yeah, they all work really well together, so it is like a very specific sound, you know.
mhm. Yeah, I think it captured that. I just think there's this one part that I've always, in like looking back now, there is that part where Chad's solo comes into that song where it's like, oh, this is the best sound on the album. Like to me,
Yeah.
it's like, wow. I don't know what was happening right there, but it all came together, and then the rest of it, I don't know. It's good. It's good. You're right. It's great. It's fun to listen to. I'm
So,
happy.
but where does well, maybe you shouldn't, but so what does that title mean? What is that?
Oh,
The title, Where's the Mansion?
um, um, I don't know what the deal. I know where I was sitting. I lived in a during the during the time that we were making that album and writing lyrics for it. I lived with my girlfriend down on the east side, on the other side of the block, where like three houses down from a house that I lived at a couple years before, where we actually had practice for some time. It was kind of a big party house. A lot of people come through. But yeah, we were sitting on the couch, and I mean, I don't know if we were stoned or what, but we just kind of had this pause, and Mark's just like, he's like, "Where's the mansion?" And we're like, "What?" And me and Chad look at him and we're like, "What?" He's like, "I don't know." And we just started laughing. He's like, "I don't know why I said that."
Uh,
And it just became a joke that he was like kind of caught up in his head, and it was like a something you say before you fall asleep or something. And that's how that song came about. I mean that's
Yeah,
that title came about, which I thought was kind of beautifully perfect. It's like it
yeah,
he almost like caught it, or like channeled it from somewhere else. It's sort of like
yeah. That's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool
yeah,
story.
yeah.
So what
I think
about
in some
Split the
ways,
Days?
Split the Days.
That album.
You'll have to ask Mark about that title, but because that was a name of a song that he kind of like. We always just thought it was kind of a cool title.
Yeah, it is. But I
Yeah.
mean, in outside, just in terms of that album,
That
you got
was like later stuff with Rob. And some of it we were kind of there were a couple songs there that we had. I think Split the Day is a song, which I've always really liked.
yeah,
Mark likes Through the Moon the most, but I think Split the Days is kind of my favorite. Um, that was a fun album because we recorded with this guy, Mark, in Rob's basement. Mark had recorded our first, like, gathered our first songs uh, that we had only ever had previously on tapes and such, like live versions of us doing. We just never had recorded some of these old songs. Um, that album was called Outer Space is What, and um, there's a lot of questions in our titles.
yeah.
I told Mark we might need this album has to be a question, of sorts, because Waiting for Diamonds isn't. So, um, I don't think we've ever intentionally did that, but we'll see what shows up. But yeah, that album. I was living in Flagstaff and I think I came back and we recorded those songs, most of them, and then
We apologize for this interruption. Please stand by. Sam, you're back.
was it me the whole time?
Yeah.
Shoot. It's funny because it seemed that it was like continued to record on my end, and I just was waiting with the assumption that it was you, and then I think something got kicked in the
Yeah.
office.
Well, you know how it goes with technology, right?
Shooby do. Um,
Two cans and a string, right?
well, it certainly feels like that now that I'm using my phone for all this. It's
Okay.
hotspot. Hopefully, nothing will happen. I think the internet will be down temporarily here.
Oh no.
Okay.
So you were talking about Split the Days.
Yeah, yeah. So that I mean, it was fun of them to think about like how share things over the internet and like get them there. I think I guess it's kind of on for the
Oh no.
that. But because of tape speed and all that stuff. But there were some songs, yeah, that we just hadn't had vocals to and had to kind of complete them. And then there was also these like songs on that album that because we didn't really write vocals, that I kind of sang sort of a bunch of mumbo jumbo on other tracks. And yeah, because it was kind of this like we had like maybe 2 or 3 days that we were just working with this guy Mark who had was a friend of Rob's, and um you could see how he kind of grew as like a person, like an engineer over the time that he had done Outer Space is What. And then yeah, he got a lot of great sounds, and we just recorded it right out of Rob's basement. And but yeah, when it came time to kind of bring that stuff into a, and mix it and master it, there were a lot of missing pieces, and I was in Flagstaff, so I was sending tapes to Mark. It was like before that, like digital voice was easy to share, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Um, yeah, so that was kind of that.
But I noticed that
Oh, and
oh, I was just going to say, I noticed that the song seemed really, the songs on Where's the Mansion are really good. But I noticed that on Split the Days, you can really see the growth of you guys as a band in terms of your songwriting, because the songs they seem a lot, you know, uh, very structured, I guess, in a way. You know what I mean?
uh,
Your songs are very, yeah, they're very, like you said, they sort of came out of this sort of like jamming type thing, or you guys working together as a band.
mhm.
Whereas it seems that on Split the Days, you could really see like songs like 106 Miles, and um of course Split the Days is very cool. Also too, I think Hippie Igloo is a really cool song.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, those songs all have like a little bit of a memory with them, I think that I don't tap into so much. But yeah, 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 it was kind of funny. I think if there was an album that had less of the bouncing back and forth of like, hey, I have this riff, um, versus hey, I have a complete song. Um, there was there were a couple more of those, I think, in Split the Days. Um, Maybe not so much. It's really interesting. Yeah, there were yeah, it was an interesting time, I think, for us. Like there was some sadness of like not being able to practice as much as we did before I moved, and it's like what's the series? Oh, during that time uh there was another Chad and Mark and Rob were just working on songs, and they had created like a series of 7 songs too by themselves, and they didn't have any singing on it. It was just them kind of jamming these songs that were partially Rob's too, that had a lot of unique stuff. I mean, so I kind of consider those songs kind of be kind of in the mix of that time period. And Yeah, because I think they still had access to Mark as like a person who could come over and record. Um, I'm also forgetting that part of the songs on Split the Days we actually did, and Davey actually recorded those for us at the spot down in where he lived in not far from me in Milwaukee. It was like an old tavern. And so they sectioned off part of it and created a wall and like a sound booth and all this stuff. It was pretty awesome what he did there. And the sound in it was amazing. He and I forget what we did those like on a reel to reel. It was an analog recording of sorts. I don't know if it's a DAT or something. I can't remember what he had as a setup, but I think we did World War Five, and I can't remember the other ones we did with him. Maybe Split the Days. Mark will know. Mark's got the memory of everything. But so that it was kind of a mix. It was a mix of a couple different things happening. And yeah, and I think they were songs that we had played live, and they were kind of on the later group of songs. And maybe with the exception of Hippie Igloo, I don't know that we played. Oh, we did do a live. We opened for my brother's band, and that was one of our, I think we all agreed it was kind of one of our favorite shows. Rob wasn't in the band anymore. We had my friend Chad play drums with us, and we did kind of workshop some of those songs for the first time live. Um, and then I think we played a show with Rob too. These are both shows that we played after I lived in Flagstaff. We had like just a little bit of time to practice things. So yeah, I think a lot of the songs on Split Today's we didn't play out live so much, except for twice, 2 or 3 times, and with the exception of a song like World War V that had never been recorded, and we wanted to like have a recording of it.
That is a great
But
song, man.
it was a fun one. I think that it kind of. I think we had a group of songs that we always wanted to play when we were in Green Bay, because the Green Bay scene was so punk heavy, and we were always playing punk bands. So we're like, okay, we'll probably mix in a 10-cent lemonade, but we want it to be surrounded by a World War V.
Yeah.
One of the,
I love that song,
and
man. I want to
that was a
ask you,
reception.
what do you mean by eating from the tree that's round?
Oh,
What is that sort of? Where are you pulling that sort of?
our friend Matt, his last name's Roundtree,
Right.
and um, and Matt was just there for all of our, like, Matt was our connection to Rob. They had worked together, and Matt was just a continual presence at our, like, especially in the transition from Davey to Rob. Matt was really there for all of our early Toy Machine Gun stuff. He was always just kind of like one of the bigger fans, and I think he was just like, he kind of had a he was a yeah, he was kind of like a personality, like where like a driving force, and like somebody that would always give us feedback, and yeah, he's just a really good friend, and he around that transition time before Rob was fully our drummer, I can't remember, there was some stuff happening. Matt had a really big accident with a group of our friends present, and Mark was there too. And we thought he was going to die. He had fallen, and no one knows exactly what happened to him, but he had fallen. And when they found him, they thought he was dead. And so he was in a coma for like a week and a half. Came out and regained, a lot of things. Some things weren't the same for him, but I think he just, like, it was a kind of a little bit of a shout out to Matt. Just
Okay.
we had a couple songs where that came in.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
curious about that. That's pretty
yeah,
cool.
because that shows up in Cool Breeze and Where's a Mansion,
Yeah,
where Eat from the Tree is round.
yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
It's sort of funny how, sometimes you hear something and you think, oh, wow, I wonder if they're making some type of like philosophical point or something. And then it turns out to be some really like totally different, just simple, you know what I mean? I guess
Yeah.
it goes back to like most things are very simple, you know what I mean? It's not like as
Yeah.
complicated as you think, So
Uh-huh. I think there's always I think for Mark and I, at one point in writing, there was this like, hey, it's stream of consciousness, like Beck sort of thing, where he's just like,
yeah.
it seems like writing about the room. And then sometimes you catch something that seems a little bit deeper or whatnot. I think there have been, the approach for me is to try to make some sense out of the lyrics,
Yeah.
but I have nothing for, the Eat from the Tree that's around is only that story. But it is a shout out to a good, which
Yeah,
seems maybe
that
even
is
more important
really
than anything.
cool. Yeah. Yeah, well, you listen and I think you want to know. At least I always wanted to know.
Mhm.
That's pretty cool. How about
Yeah.
oh well, yeah, what about Whirlwind Eddie?
That song, Mark and I, it's kind of like back to the kind of hanging out sort of uh, um, a product of. yeah, it's like, what's making our decisions to go out west? Is it like, I think sometimes it's like it was all kind of wrapped up in the, because I think I remember Mark's like, we should drive out to see Eric, who our really good friend who had moved and had just a he just had so many things going on at this time um, with his life. And we thought it'd be really good for us to make a trip out west to see him. And so we did that, and we were writing music. Like part of it was like, we'll record ourselves in along the way, like playing jams and such. So we have like these tape recordings of us out there. And then that was my first time out west. And our friend Heather, she went further. We stayed in Albuquerque, and she went out to Flagstaff because there was a group of kids in Flagstaff. So I was like, oh, Flagstaff. And so basically a year or two later, the same thing happened for me. It was like, I'm going to head out west and kind of take this trip again, but make it to Flagstaff and see if I want to live there. And at that time, we were needing to write lyrics for Where's the Mansion or for Whirlwind Eddie and like stuff on that album. And I just like I'm like a glacier when it comes to writing lyrics. I mean, I was actively writing lyrics. I usually need the fire of the songs. Like, hey, you have 5 minutes. I was like, okay, all right. So, I mean, I did that with the last album too, and I was Whirlwind Eddie is um, basically two things. It's basically just saying whirlwind and whirlwind, right? I mean, because an eddy is a whirlwind. Um, but uh, we all the lyrics from that were kind of I mean I was having I think it should be noted I usually forget about how tough that time was in my life. I was the choice to move out west was because I don't think that I could have survived my mental health could have survived staying in Milwaukee. And there were a lot of things going on. I lived in a pretty rough area, and I was just making it by. I mean, I remember having a panic attack right before I went and recorded my parts for Space Case Collision. And I remember actively singing Space Case Collision. I'm like, wow, this is getting me out of my panic attack, and it's like where like music has been therapeutic. So I think there was a lot of stuff that I was like longing for in Whirlwind Eddie, and that's kind of coming out, like where like I need to find a place to settle, this whole thing. And we were driving through Sedona and Flagstaff, so a lot of those things were kind of coming up. Like I was like writing this little book. Actually, in Sedona, there's these things called vortexes, and people like create religions around them, But one of the features of the vortex that you're in it is usually the energy or the wind that kind of gets spun into like because it gets kind of caught into the canyons or wherever that vortex is, and you will see little whirlwinds and things like that. And the juniper branches are bent that way, just from how energy wind gets trapped in those areas. So I was kind of writing about that too. But yeah, a lot of it was, also reflecting on what was happening in my internal process, which is not something that I was used to doing in terms of writing. It was usually about, it was more extroverted, writing around like what's happening in our lives rather than an internal process. So probably Whirlwind Eddie is one of the first ones there, and probably Where's the Mansion too. I was really finding out about Buddhism and like some of my like reading about philosophies like Eastern philosophy, and I think things were just kind of showing up there. My understanding of what those things we were saying at the time and how it, filtered through me and how it applied to me. And it's nice to have like a band to write lyrics for and kind of get it get it out, otherwise probably just would have been thinking about it a lot.
Well, that's what.
Thanks for asking about that song, Eddie. I didn't even think about that. I haven't thought about that in a long time. It's
Well,
special to have this.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I think when you do listen, when you listen to a band's lyrics, or you sort of, a lot of times you can take it in a lot of different ways, right? And sometimes you hear things and you think, like eat from the tree that's round. I thought, oh wow, it's a philosophy, right? And it turned out not to be, or something. But I just noticed that there were certain songs, certain things. Maybe I'll put on my smart glasses. But yeah. So I just was curious about that, and I think that is really sort of, the interesting thing, going back to you guys' relationship as friends, and, and having that for a long time. You really know each other as people, and all these things sort of come together, you know what I mean? In one unit. And I think that that's really cool. It's really, it's interesting to really, when you listen to it, I especially going back to what I was saying about like 10 Cent Lemonade or 106 Miles and all those, they're sort of like, it's actually you guys, you know what I mean? It's Toy Machine Gun. And that sort of covers a little bit more than just a band, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
really about your life. So it's sort of like the band is sort of like your extension for channeling individually and collectively your experience, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just pretty
Yeah. It's kind of
cool.
like taking a, yeah, I feel like I think what's nice about it is, I mean, I think it's great. Mark's mind, he's able to remember so many things, but um, without the need, like, I don't know exactly how he does it, but for me, it's like I have to take photos. I was kind of the photographer of just like mapping my way along my friends' lives and my life. And um, not that I was any really good at it. It was more or less just to document. And so I remember days and times because of that. But the band's really been helpful for that. It's of
Yeah.
like, oh, that's what I was doing. Yeah. What I was doing in 2001, I sometimes just have to look back to like what the band was doing and
That is really
um,
cool. But it's
it's
really
fun. It's
cool to
fun
have
like
that
that.
connection though, because you guys know each other as people. You know what I mean? It's not like just a
Yeah.
working relationship. So, you have that gives you a whole different, it's a whole different creative expression rather than, oh, we're here together and, we're going to write this and, what does that even mean? That maybe it doesn't even matter. It's just a great riff or something. But, I think that is really something that, at least for me, made your band, you know, I think it's interesting, you know, it makes it stand out. You have great songs and, but that element really takes it to a whole different place. Who's Mr. Disco Man?
Uh, Disco Man came about from
But
we
I
were
mean,
very bold.
I saw the video.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
So,
That was the latest one and the only one since that oh wait, we have one other Disco Man that is where Disco Man's actually present, uh but I think the latest one that was the YouTube one, it's Disco Man's son, Meditation Man. I played both characters.
oh, okay.
Um And it was that was something like, we are not going to write anything at all. We're going to write it as we go, or right before we record it, we do something. So everybody collectively trying to, okay, well, I'm going to go over here and just film it and like whatever. It's completely ridiculous. I mean, why? And I think it's like, if you get a shot that needs to be edited, that's perfect for Disco Man, because you're not
Yeah.
going to edit it, like, so it can't be too perfect. Yeah, I think we it started, Disco Man 1 was Davey, the old drummer, and I and our friend Nate were in the basement. It's like, okay, you're a thug, and then you somehow kidnap Nate, and then it became, I had this suit.
Yeah.
I think there's only one picture of it. I'm skateboarding in it. It was a Partridge Family suit that was like polyester with orange and some bell bottoms. And unfortunately, we got the tape stolen from this guy that lived in our unit. He stole a
Wow.
lot of our shit. Yeah, he was addicted to crack, but um, we came back, and um, the I think all of us would have traded everything we owned just to get that tape back. So I should say it for the record. Should anybody ever come across a VHS tape that
And
says "Cops Too Hot for TV," maybe it just says "Cops." We recorded over that, most of it, and it was a stream of Disco Man 1 through 4. Um, but yeah, we've that was such a funny thing for us to do, because we would just watch him over and over again and just like crack up at things that would show up in him, and the different characters that our friends made for themselves. So yeah, I think I made Disco Man for myself, and then Meditation Man, and we have yet to record another one. I hope that someday we do it. You know, now that's been 10 years.
yeah, that's
But
cool.
all those references show up here and there, and in our music.
Yeah,
I
no,
mean that.
it's very cool. It's very
Yeah.
yeah, even when I looked at the like that documentary thing you made.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, day, and it's pretty cool. It's there's something really sort of just sort of endearing about it. You know what I
Uh-huh.
mean? It's just sort of like
Yeah.
really this raw I don't know how to describe it. It's just really real. Do you know what I mean by that?
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah,
I
it's
don't
it's
know.
kind of us sticking around. I mean,
Yeah, but I just thought it was really cool.
it
It's
feels
like
very
this
real to
is,
me. That's
I
like what we
know, but
always
I
do.
mean
So
it's
yeah, we
not, it's not like this whole really polished you know, done, professionally done type thing. It's just like, someone shooting it, and it's just this real sort of, like a rock and roll high school thing, type. Like you sort of, it's like you guys are channeling that sort of archetypical type vibe, you know, but it's total
yeah,
rock and
thanks.
roll.
Yeah, it's fun. I think it's like, we used to love playing the old Disco Mans for everybody. If like, look what we just did, or something,
Yeah.
and like our friends, they're like, some of our friends would be in some of them, and they wouldn't be in the other, and then we get to show those guys what we did for Disco Man 3. And if our friend Tim was in town, it's like, we have to record Disco Man. If Tim's here, because he lived in Philly. So it's just kind of, that was the idea. Anytime Tim was in town, or like one of the characters shows up, um, Davey's in town. That's why we did the last one. So it's like, if you're a part of the initial crew of the Disco Man legacy, we're probably gonna record one if we're all in the same place together.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. That to me is some of my most cherished memories are just kind of goofing around in exactly the way. And that's why that one of the central figures in our, I built a shrine around Purple Hair, which was probably the character that had the least amount of lines. In that last one, was Chad. He was Purple Hair, and he didn't really have a backstory at all. You could assume that everybody else had a backstory, but that he was just a henchman of sorts, um, or like a sidekick rather. And we're like, well, we need to have a song about purple hair. So we wrote "Painted Purple" is all about purple hair, and completely inspired by, like, if he was a comic book character, what would he be? And
Cool.
and so I built a shrine to purple hair, and he's a central figure on the cover I'll be
Chad is?
sending you. Well, yeah, you it's the central statue in the shrine of Waiting for Diamonds album. That's
Oh, okay. Yeah.
that's
Yeah. Yeah.
that's what that's about.
Oh, okay.
So Disco Man has its way of influencing a lot of things, no matter what. We have
Yeah.
a song on this new album that's all about Purple Hair's first green hair, the first guy. I think we want to celebrate Chad a lot for just like everything he's done and overcome. And, I think those characters are kind of like speaking to him a little bit, and like our relationship with him and our band. And, so it's very important to us to kind of create, you know, something out of so many things coming together.
It's really cool.
Yeah, thankfully we have Disco Mans. Those are really what keep us going.
Yeah.
It's like fodder for so many songs.
It's pretty trippy, man. Pretty trippy, pretty cool.
Yeah.
Sort of like this,
Yeah.
like I said, this going back to this whole world that you guys have created through your
Yeah.
relationship and your music and all that stuff. So that's pretty cool. All right. Well, why don't we leave it there, Sam?
Cool.
And I'm going to talk to you for a minute once we're done here. But thanks. I appreciate it.
Thank you. This is great to, yeah,
Okay. Hold on.
storytell.
Cool. And that was Sam Taylor from the band Toy Machine Gun. Thank you so much for listening. And be sure to check out their great albums, Where's the Mansion and Split the Days, available now on Tone Up Records, wherever you stream or download music. And thank you for your continued support and continuing to download previous episodes. I appreciate the comments, the likes. Keep it coming. Give us a rating on Apple Music. Leave a comment. I believe you can leave comments on Spotify now. So anyway, thank you very much. I'm very grateful. And stay tuned. Tell me your fantasy. I'll be what you want me to be. The darkness will turn to light. I'm your dirty secret tonight. Dream or not and take a look inside. The College of Rock and Roll Knowledge is a production of Tonup Incorporated. Copyright 2025, Tonup Incorporated.